The midnight air was cool against his thermal-sensitive skin, the darkness a comforting blanket to his species. His vertical pupils dilated fully, drinking in what little ambient light existed and transforming the pitch-black forest into a crisp, detailed landscape. Status report. He sub-vocalized through the neural link connecting his 12-soldier team. Perimeter secure. No detection signals. Human settlement ahead remains dormant. Came the immediate response from Lieutenant Zix. Valek's jaw plates clicked in satisfaction. The intelligence briefings had been correct. Humans were pathetically diurnal creatures, helpless without their artificial illumination. With Earth's power grid disabled in this sector and the communications scrambled, the inhabitants of this strategic command center would be blind, disoriented, and vulnerable. Perfect hunting conditions. Remember, Valek instructed as they approached the edge of the forest. Our objective is precise elimination of their military leadership. The High Command wants this planet's resistance broken before dawn. Through enhanced vision, he studied the settlement below. Dark buildings stood like tombstones against the night sky. Streets empty, windows black. Not a single light burned anywhere. They've gone to ground, Lieutenant Zix observed, hiding in their shelters. Valek's mouth parts twitched in what passed for a Zythian smile. They don't even know we're here. By dawn, their command structure will be decapitated, and they'll awaken to chaos. He signaled the advanced with a flick of his taloned hand. The 12 Zythian warriors moved like liquid shadow down the hillside, making less noise than the night breeze. Their bioengineered armor absorbed both sound and heat signatures. To any primitive detection system, they were ghosts. They reached the first structures, abandoned buildings on the settlement's edge. Valek gestured for Trooper Malk to take point. The soldier nodded, raising his molecular disruptor and gliding forward into the darkness between two buildings. And then Malk simply vanished. No sound, no struggle, no distress signal for the neural link. There one moment, gone the next. Valek froze, his dorsal spine stiffening in alarm. Malk, report, he hissed through the link. Silence. Trooper Malk, report immediately. Nothing. Then, as if in response, something wet splattered onto Lieutenant Zix's shoulder. The lieutenant flinched, raised a clawed hand to touch the thick, purple liquid. His eyes widened as he recognized it. Zythian blood, still warm. Slowly, the entire squad looked up. There, suspended from a branch 15 feet above, was what remained of Trooper Malk. His body hung upside down, armor peeled back like a fruit rind. His throat had been opened with visceral savagery. Most disturbing was the expression frozen on his face. Not fear, but confusion. He hadn't even seen death coming. Defensive formation, Valek ordered, the first tendrils of unease crawling up his spine. This was wrong, very wrong. The remaining soldiers fanned out in a protective circle, weapons raised, scanning the darkness with eyes evolved over millennia to dominate the night. Lieutenant Zix activated his thermal sensors, sweeping the surrounding area. No heat signatures, Commander, he reported, confusion evident in his tone. No movement, no... The lieutenant's words cut off as something yanked him upwards into the darkness above. A single, strangled gurgle came through the neural link, then silence. 3 seconds later, Zix's lower half fell back to the ground with a wet splat. His legs twitched spasmodically as neural connections fired randomly. The upper half remained missing. Above them came a sound like meat being fed into a grinder, followed by a series of satisfied grunts. Something warm and viscous rained down upon the squad. Intestinal fluids, brain matter, and fragments of exoskeleton. Trooper Nask looked up just in time to catch a globule of partially liquefied eye tissue directly in his face, the gelatinous substance sliding down his scales. He vomited, breaking formation as he doubled over. Steady, Valek hissed, trying to maintain control. Maintain formation! But Nask continued retching, until a thin wire looped around his neck from behind and pulled tight with such force that it nearly decapitated him. His head flopped backwards, held on only by a few strands of cartilage, purple blood fountaining from the severed arteries. The wire yanked upward, taking Nask's nearly severed head with it. His body collapsed, still pumping blood in rhythmic spurts that painted the ground in spreading pools of luminescent purple. "Above!" screamed Trooper Krell, firing his disruptor into the canopy of a nearby tree. The weapon's discharge illuminated the area for a split second, revealing nothing but empty branches. As Krell continued firing wildly, one of his disruptor bolts struck something metallic hidden in the tree line. The night erupted in blinding light as a fuel cell detonated, sending a shockwave through the forest that knocked several Zythian off their feet. Flaming debris rained down, chunks of metal and synthetic materials cutting through the air like shrapnel. Trooper Val wasn't fast enough to dodge. A jagged piece of metal as long as his forearm punched through his chest plate, pinning him to the trunk of a tree. He stared down at the object in shock, watching as his own bioluminescent blood bubbled around the edges of the wound. When he tried to pull it free, the serrated edges tore through his muscle tissue, releasing a flood of viscera that spilled down the front of his armor. Vel opened his mouth to scream, but only managed a wet gurgle as blood filled his throat. He slumped forward, still impaled, his legs twitching as death claimed him. The explosion had another effect. It momentarily blinded the Zythian's sensitive eyes, adapted for darkness rather than sudden, intense light. As they stumbled about, trying to restore their vision, the shadows around them came alive. Krell backed up, still firing wildly, until he bumped into what he thought was another soldier. He turned and found himself staring into a pair of eyes that reflected the faint starlight like polished mirrors. Human eyes. The face they belonged to was painted in black and green stripes, breaking up its outline in the darkness. "Hello there," the human whispered and smiled. Krell's scream both pierced the night and the neural link as the human's hands moved with blinding speed. One hand clamped over his mouth, cutting off the scream, while the other drove a serrated combat knife up under his jaw, through the soft palate, and directly into his brain. The blade twisted once, twice, making a sound like someone stirring thick stew. Krell's legs spasmed wildly as neural tissue shredded. The human lowered the dying Zythian to the ground with almost tender care, then disappeared back into the shadows, taking the knife and a good portion of Krell's brain matter with him. Panic rippled through the squad. The Zythian were unaccustomed to fear. On 100 worlds, across 1,000 battlefields, they had always been the apex predators of the dark. But now... "Releasing pheromone trackers," Valek ordered, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Find our missing soldiers." The squad deployed their biological markers, designed to track any Zythian by their unique scent signature. The readings came back immediately, and impossibly.
"Commander, I can't detect Malk, Six, or Krell,"
said Trooper Vryn, her voice tight.
"It's as if their scent signatures have been erased."
"Impossible," Valek snarled. "Nothing masks a pheromone trail. Nothing!" A soft thud came from behind. Valek whirled to see Trooper Sath collapse, his head twisted at an unnatural angle. There had been no sound of approach, no warning. "Fall back!" Valek barked, abandoning stealth for survival. "Defensive position in that structure, now!" The remaining 8 Zythian warriors retreated to an abandoned building, securing entry points and establishing firing lines. Valek's hands didn't tremble as he activated the emergency beacon. He wouldn't allow it. But the cold knot in his gut was unfamiliar and deeply disturbing. "Battlecruiser dominance, this is Ground Team Alpha. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. Request immediate extraction." Static crackled through the comms. Nothing else. We tried again, boosting the signal. "Battlecruiser dominance, respond!" The static cleared for a moment, but instead of the expected message, a voice came through, speaking perfect, unaccented Zythian dialect. "You seemed that we feared the dark, but we hunt in it. A human voice. Valek's blood ran cold.
Secure all positions. They've compromised the...
The building's emergency lights suddenly flashed on, blinding the Zythian momentarily with their intensity. In that split second of illumination, Valek saw them. The human female crouched on the ceiling like some impossible predator, her eyes reflecting light like an animal's, a curved blade clenched between her teeth. 3 more humans moving along the walls with unnatural speed, crawling sideways like insects, their bodies painted in patterns that broke up their outlines. And behind the squad, something worse. A massive human male, muscles bunched under skin painted black, face obscured by a mask that made him look like a skull with too many teeth. The lights died. Darkness rushed back in. Trooper Mika screamed first, a sound no Zythian warrior has ever made in the field. Something heavy landed on his back, driving him to the floor. In the darkness, the squad heard a wet, ripping sound, followed by a bubbling gurgle as Mika tried to scream through a throat that was no longer intact. "I got one!" called the cheerful female voice, sounding for all the world like she was playing some amusing game. "That's 3 for me tonight!" "Show off!" responded a deeper voice from somewhere above. "Some of us are going for quality over quantity." Disruptor fire erupted in wild, panicked bursts, illuminating fragments of the nightmare in strobing flashes. In one flash, Valek saw the human female straddling Mika's back, her hands buried wrist-deep in his open chest cavity, pulling out something purple and pulsating, his secondary heart. In the next flash, she was biting into it like an apple, purple blood running down her chin. "Spicy!" she called out, laughing. Another flash revealed Trooper Vryn being hoisted up into the rafters by what looked like a thin wire around her neck, legs kicking frantically as she was strung up like a festival decoration. A human male sat casually on a beam above, reeling her up hand over hand, whistling a jaunty tune that carried eerily through the chaos. "I've got another one for collection," he shouted. "This one's female, I think. And check the ovipositor sex under the 3rd ventral plate," someone called back helpfully. "That's how you tell." Another flash of weapons fire illuminated Vryn's final moments as the human above her produced a serrated combat knife and began methodically dismantling her while she still lived. He removed her armored plates one by one, exposing the vulnerable organs beneath. Each cut was deliberate, avoiding major arteries to prevent her from bleeding out too quickly. "Hey, Richard," the human called as he worked. "You remember that anatomy diagram the science guy showed us? They were right about the secondary nervous system." He prodded something inside Vryn's open thorax, causing her limbs to spasm violently. "You see? You touch the ganglion here, and the legs go crazy." In the next flash of light, Vryn's thorax had been completely hollowed out, her internal organs arranged neatly on the beam beside her still-living torso. The human was now delicately extracting what appeared to be her neural cluster, a pulsating mass of tissue that controlled her autonomous functions. "Got it!" he crowed triumphantly, holding up the quivering organ. "Perfect extraction! Oh, that's worth double points!" Vryn's eyes tracked the movement, watching her own neural cluster being removed. She remained conscious for 23 more seconds, long enough to see the human take a celebratory bite of her still pulsing organ before her systems finally shut down. Across the room, another soldier, Trooper Husk, was having his exoskeleton systematically broken at every joint. The sound like dry branches snapping in rapid succession. The human responsible applied precise pressure, breaking each segment in a specific order that caused maximum pain without allowing unconsciousness. The Zythian's scream transformed into a bubbling moan as his jaw was dislocated, and then crushed. Valek caught more horrific glimpses as his soldiers were dragged into the shadows, pulled up into ceiling spaces, yanked through doorways, all while the humans bantered as if on a routine hunting expedition. "They're everywhere!" shrieked Trooper Loth before something wet and heavy hit the floor. Valek fired at the movement, only to realize he'd shot one of his own soldiers. In the muzzle flash, he saw a human clinging to the warrior's back. Something gleaming pressed against the Zythian's throat. Blood fountained in the next flash of light.
How?
He gasped into his neural link.
How can they see?
We don't see, came a whispered response from a voice that wasn't Zythian. Someone, something, had hacked into their secure neural channel.
We feel your fear. We smell your blood. We hear your hearts beating. And we use night vision goggles.
Commander Valek ran. Pride, duty, honor, all abandoned in the primal need to survive. 3 of his soldiers had made it out of the building with him, but one by one they were picked off in the darkness. He heard their deaths. Quiet, efficient, terrible. His perfect night vision showed him empty streets, vacant buildings, clear paths. Yet death came from these empty spaces as if the shadows themselves were hunting. His legs burned as he sprinted toward the extraction point where their landing craft waited. If he could reach it, activate the automated return protocols. He burst into a clearing, the landing pad just ahead. The sleek shape of the Zythian craft sat undisturbed in the moonlight. Salvation. Valek froze, suddenly aware of the utter silence that had fallen. No wind, no insects, no sounds of pursuit. He took one cautious step forward, then another.
You aren't the only ones who evolved for the night,
said a calm, almost amused voice behind him. Valek whirled, disruptor raised, but his arm was suddenly caught in the grip of impossible strength. He stared into the eyes that glinted in the darkness. Eyes that shouldn't be able to see him, but somehow tracked his every movement.
How?
Valek gasped.
You are diurnal creatures. You need light.
The human's mouth curved upward, revealing blunt teeth that nonetheless sent a shiver of atavistic terror through Valek's body.
We started as diurnal, yes.
The human said conversationally, as if they weren't in the middle of a battlefield.
But we've spent thousands of years hunting in darkness, crafting tools to extend our vision, training our other senses, creating predators of ourselves.
The grip on Valek's arm tightened until bone cracked with a sound like stepping on dry branches. The Zythian commander howled in pain as jagged fragments of his exoskeleton punctured through his scales.
Your kind hunts for conquest,
the human continued, watching with clinical interest as luminescent purple blood seeped from the wound.
We hunt because we choose to.
He twisted Valek's shattered arm, eliciting another shriek.
Interesting. Your species appears to have a much lower pain threshold than ours. Is that why you rely so heavily on stealth? Because you can't take a punch? I'm sure that's worked on a lot of diurnal species before, huh? Well, not this one.
Something moved in Valek's peripheral vision. Shapes detaching from the darkness surrounding him. Dozens of humans, appearing as if conjured from the night itself. They wore various configurations of dark clothing and face paint, some with devices over their eyes, others seemingly relying on natural vision. All were splattered with a distinctive purple of Zythian blood.
Please,
Valek whimpered, dignity forgotten.
We were only following orders. The Dominion requires new territories.
Shh, 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 shh. The human interrupted, placing a finger against what passed for Valek's lips.
No one cares what you have to say. We know the truth. We know you're here trying to enslave us.
He turned to his compatriots.
Anyone want a souvenir? His head would make a nice wall decoration.
Dibs on the eyes, called a female voice. My kid's doing a science project on alien optical structures.
I'll take the neural implant,
another said.
Tech Division's offering a case of beer for intact specimens.
venom sacs for me," said a third, stepping forward with what looked like gardening shears. "Makes a hell of a cocktail mixer when you dilute it, right?" Valek screamed, a sound that began as a high-pitched shriek of terror and ended in a wet, bubbling rattle as one of the humans casually drove a combat knife up through the underside of his jaw and into his brainstem. His body convulsed violently, purple blood fountaining from his mouth, nose slits, and ears as the human wiggled the blade to ensure maximum damage. "Oops, I got a little eager there," the knife wielder said sheepishly. "Sorry about that."
"No worries," said the first human, letting Valek's corpse slump to the ground. "Plenty more where he came from. The mothership still has, 5,000 troops?"
5,217, according to intel, replied another, already kneeling to begin harvesting parts from Valek's twitching body. "Enough to keep us busy for a few weeks, at least." Dawn broke over the human settlement, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. On the landing pad, a group of humans in combat gear were loading the last of alien bodies into a containment unit, the scene resembling nothing so much as a group of hunters processing their game after a successful outing. "That's the last of them," said Sergeant Smitty, pulling off her night vision goggles and wiping purple alien blood from her face, leaving streaks that matched her camouflage paint. 12 kills, no casualties on our side, not even a scratch." She held up a string of small, iridescent objects that clinked together like macabre wind chimes. "I got me a nice necklace of ocular implants, too. Yeah, xenobiologists can have the eyeballs, but these neural interfaces are going in my collection." Captain Rivera nodded, running a cleaning cloth over the curved knife he'd used hours earlier. The blade was still crusted with purple gore that flaked off as he polished.
"It's good hunting tonight. It's clean, efficient. Though I have to say, Dawson, that thing you did with the spinal fluid extraction was messy as hell."
Private Dawson grinned, his teeth startlingly white against his face paint. "What can I say? I'm a traditionalist. My grandfather taught me the technique on deer when I was 8. The trick is to puncture the vertebral column at exactly the right spot, then suck out the fluid with a hollow reed. Or, in this case," he patted the metal tube attached to his belt, "a tactical straw." "Why would you even want alien spinal fluid?" asked Private Jackson, a newer recruit to the Special Operations team, looking slightly queasy despite his earlier participation. "Makes you immune to their mind control," Dawson said with a completely straight face. When Jackson's eyes widened, the older soldier burst out laughing. "I'm fucking with you, rookie! It's for my brother-in-law. He collects weird shit. Last year I got him a jar full of those tentacle crabs from Proxima Centauri." "Why do they keep attacking us at night?" Jackson asked, changing the subject. "It's like they haven't figured out we use night vision goggles." "Arrogance," said Lieutenant Davidson, shrugging as he casually tossed his Zythian hand into the containment unit. "Their intelligence is shit. They evolved those fancy eyes and decided they owned the dark. Problem is, eyes aren't everything." He tapped his ear. "We got these, and these." He touched his nose. "And most importantly, we got these." He tapped his temple. "Been hunting in the dark since before we invented fire. Night vision just makes it sporting." Smitty laughed, stretching like a cat in the morning sun. "Their senses are so dull compared to ours. When Jimmy knocked over that trash can, I thought for sure we'd be found out. 4 of us froze like statues for 5 minutes, and those purple idiots kept walking right past." "You remember when Richard sneezed right in the middle of the ambush setup?" Dawson added, howling with laughter. "I nearly shit myself. And that big one, the commander, he's just looking around all confused." Smitty continued, wiping tears of mirth from her eyes. "I guess they can't hear worth a damn. It's like hunting deaf, nearsighted grandpas."
"Or smell,"
added Rivera, gesturing to his camouflage paint, now flaking off to reveal skin beneath.
"This stuff blocks their pheromone tracking completely. We're practically invisible to them. Old Davy Wilkins in R&D figured that out after analyzing their first landing party. Mixed it up in his bathtub with some deer urine and charcoal."
"Works better than my wife's face cream and probably has the same ingredients," Davidson quipped to general laughter. Jackson was examining one of the alien corpses, fascinated by the articulated exoskeleton. You know, in briefings, they made these guys sound terrifying. The scourge of 17 star systems and all that. What were they even fighting? Like ladybugs? He poked a talon that broke off easily. So much for the fearsome night predators of the galaxy. They're actually pretty fragile up close. Like this one. I just grabbed his head and twisted and it popped off like a bottle cap. That's nothing, Dawson interjected. A big one I cornered in the supply closet? I pulled all his limbs one by one, like taking apart a crab. He was still alive when I got to the last leg. Made these little clicking sounds with whatever they use for vocal cords.
You guys are amateurs,
Richard said, unwrapping a cloth package that contained several purple-stained instruments that resembled dental tools.
Do you know their exoskeletons remain sensitive after death? I spent 40 minutes working on that officer we caught. The one with the fancy insignia.
He held up something that looked like a dried sea urchin.
This is what is left of his sensory cluster. I kept him alive through the whole extraction. New record. You know what the real irony is?
Rivera said, watching as the alien craft prepared for research transport.
Intelligence says these guys have conquered dozens of species by attacking at night. Their whole strategy relies on other species being blind in darkness.
He kicked a severed Zythian head, sending it rolling across the tarmac.
They never encountered anyone who hunts for fun, or uses tools to overcome biological limitations. Did they really think we'd lay down and let them enslave us so easily?
He grinned, a predatory expression spreading across his face.
We could have fought them during the day and probably still won, but where'd be the fun in that?
To the night shift, Davidson called out, raising an imaginary toast.
The night shift,
the team responded in unison, laughing as they finished their work in the growing daylight, already looking forward to the next night's hunt. Off to the side, one wounded Zythian soldier lay hidden beneath debris, having played dead during the massacre. As he listened to humans laugh and joke about the slaughter of his comrades, a new emotion overtook his fear: understanding. The Zythian Empire have made a terrible, terrible mistake. They hadn't invaded a planet of prey species. They awakened a nest of predators who had killed them not from necessity, but because they enjoyed it. And they weren't about to give up that easily. As the human patrol moved away, the wounded alien dragged himself toward the tree line, desperate to reach the emergency beacon hidden there. The Dominion needed to know the truth about these humans before it was too late. Behind him, a twig snapped. The Zythian froze and slowly turned his head. A small human female stood there, a juvenile, no more than 12 Earth years by his estimation. She wore no tactical gear, no armor, just simple civilian clothing. In her hand was a crude projectile weapon, ancient technology by galactic standards.
"Hi,"
she said brightly.
"Are you one of the aliens everyone's been hunting?"
The Zythian considered his options. Perhaps this young one could be reasoned with. Their young must be taught to kill. They weren't born predators like adults.
"Please,"
he rasped in halting English.
"I mean no harm. I only wish to return home."
The human child cocked her head, regarding him with curiosity.
"Mom says you came here to conquer Earth and enslave everyone. She says you wanted to hurt me and my little brother." "A misunderstanding,"
the Zythian lied.
"We sought only peaceful contact."
The child seemed to consider this, and then she raised her weapon.
"You're lying! Dad says your kind always lies. Also, your blood makes great fertilizer for Mom's tomatoes."
The Zythian's last thought, as the primitive slug thrower roared and darkness claimed him, was that humans didn't become predators. They were born that way.